Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all well at home. Tonight's BS Blathers is something different. We're talking about something that's our current affairs, and we're talking about a specific film called The Oil Machine. So tonight's discussion is about after The Oil Machine. What happened? What was the impact after this film um, just reached out to everyone? We're going to discuss some of the issues within the film and talk with some of our guests tonight and see how they feel and what's their perspectives. The film itself is around about 1 hours and 20 minutes long. It has BSL on it as well. So we've watched the film, and tonight we are so pleased that we have a person from the film who's on our panel. So we have four guests tonight that we're going to hopefully have a lovely discussion. I'll also show you some clips of the film. And the aim of tonight really is to understand what's happening in climate change, what the effects are, and how oil and fossil fuels come into that. The North Sea, as you know, is at the top of Scotland, and there's been drilling up there and taking out oil for a number of years. But how has that affected us? How has its legacy affected us? And how do we need to change so that we can actually put mitigations in place for that? So really, we're looking for everyone, every single person, to take positive action and think about how they can play their small part in this. We'll talk about the debate regarding economics in oil and how that might affect us. We'll talk about how oil supports business and employment. Uh, So we'll talk about all the supply chains that are also affected with oil production, whether it's produced or not. So again, the title of the film is The Oil Machine, and it talks about how we use oil for many things in life, whether it be for cars, aviation, and other things. Here's a quick look.
This is made of oil. 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 This is also made of oil.
You see, look at those different things, everyday objects. All of them have been made from oil. And that was something I was quite taken aback about. So tonight, the discussion is about all of that. So our first guest, and I'm so delighted, is Emma Davey. Emma, if you'd like to join us. Hello, Emma. Hello,
Hello.
how are you?
Very good to be here.
And we're also joined by our interpreter, Kyra, tonight. So, Emma, could you tell me a wee bit about your background, please?
So, I live in Scotland and I work as a lecturer in documentary making at Edinburgh College of Art. And I also make documentaries and have done for about 15, 20 years. I still like to think of myself as a young filmmaker, but really I'm approaching pension age, so I don't think I can call myself a young filmmaker anymore. But I think the issue of what we're facing in terms of the climate emergency, I think, is something that obviously concerns us all. And as filmmakers, the question how we represent the complexity of that is something that really interests me. So I can talk a little bit. I don't know if you want me to talk now about how the film came about, but it certainly was something that I hadn't planned to make. But maybe I can go into that in a bit.
Do you
I don't
know,
know.
you're teasing our audience there, Emma. Just hold fire just now. Let's get our other guests on. But Emma, you were actually the director of the film. That's correct, wasn't it, for that
That's
documentary?
right.
Amazing. So pleased you can join us tonight. We're so grateful. Now, I'd also like to introduce our other guest. Our first guest is Erin. Hi there, Afro. Erin, could you introduce yourself? Absolutely. My name's Erin McCluskey. This is my sign name, Erin. So, Erin, why are you interested in oil and the debate surrounding it? Well, genuinely, all my life, I've been interested and I've taken interest in climate change and all the permutations and implications of that. So, this is just the next process. I watched the documentary, it had a huge impact on me, and I'm just so excited to discuss more tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Our next guest is Marilyn.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Can you introduce yourself, Marilyn?
Yeah, my name is Marilyn Wilrich, and I'm involved in Save the Earth. I'm a campaigner on the environment. I clean beaches. I try to get rid of the plastic detritus that washes up on our shores.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. We have our final guest, last but not least, is our Christers. Hello, Christers. How are you doing?
Hey.
Oh, well, I know what to do. And my name's Christers, and I'm really excited to be here tonight because I'm passionate about what's happening globally and what's happening to our world, climate change, and things are just getting pressurized. It's a hot topic and it shouldn't be ignored. Wow. Well, every one of you are coming from a perspective where you're looking for change and you're aware of how oil and the production of oil affects you. So, to begin with our questions, could I ask Emma, could you briefly just give us an idea? How did you come about actually getting the film commissioned in the first place?
Well, I have a friend called James Marriott who wrote a book called Crude Britannia, along with a co-author called Terry McAllister. And James had talked to me about the possibility of making a film out of the book. And I said it was impossible to do such a thing. He met many people in the oil business, ranging from people who worked as on rigs to top executives, including the head of Shell at the time. But we did agree that we would work together on something that might evolve into something different. And I think round about the time was the COP. The COP in Glasgow was about to happen a year after. So a year before COP in Glasgow, I started the film because I felt it wasn't enough for us to talk in abstractions about the climate. I felt like that was happening a lot. And we needed to talk about concrete things that were happening on our doorstep. I didn't know enough about North Sea oil. As a Scot, I knew that it was something that we had considered to be something that we should, that was related to our wealth, but that it wasn't related enough to questions about ownership, questions about the implications of pollution, questions about really what it meant for the emissions that we were emitting as a country. I felt we didn't ask those questions then. So when I started the film, I wanted to ask those questions.
Lovely. Thank you so much. That's so interesting, just that short bit at the beginning. So just to let you know, the audience at home will be watching us. And again, if you want to put in a question, put your questions in our comments. Put your comments in our Facebook page, and I'll try my best to ask those questions on your behalf, because this is about sharing knowledge and sharing information. Now, I know every one of you have actually watched the film. What was your thoughts on it? And maybe I'll start with you, Erin. Okay. Well, as I said earlier, I was really interested to watch it. I've always been interested in climate change and environmental issues and everything else. But what I really observed from the documentary and where it had the massive impact for me was that I didn't realise that a lot of the information that was in there that is actually happening, like for example, in what's happening around the country and the seas rising, how other things are happening, and how it's destroying in the environment. Also, to understand the oils and everything, even in us humans and animals, it's like, whoa, You know, I'll be honest with you, I watched it last night, and this morning I got up and I started to look around me, and I was so aware that everything was made from oil. Marilyn, what was your view of the documentary? Oh, I think Marilyn's froze. Maybe she can't see me. Maybe we could Kyra ask Marilyn what she thought of the documentary. Oh, we've
Oh,
got
well,
it.
I feel the same as Erin, actually. I was quite shocked. You know, at how much the oil industry has achieved, you know, how much fossil fuels have affected everything. It's quite shocking, really. I mean, I thought oil, you know, was there, but I didn't think it was involved in everything, the economics and everything. So the film really did have an impact. Yeah.
Christers, what about yourself? You know, I'm the same as Erin Marlin. It was an impact. I thought I knew I was quite fairly well versed, but then when I realised all the implications, particularly for the economy and things like that, and I thought, well, how is that going to help us in the future? How's the economy going to work? We need to look at replacing fossil fuels, looking about how we fund that. And it's everything. It's not just like it's 50 shades of grey. There's so many different things that all link to each other. So it's a massive topic, and that was huge for me to see that. I'm hoping Emma will feel really good that it had such an impact. But could I ask people, when you maybe looking at it at home, when you saw the toys and things like that, is there other things that maybe you looked at and you thought, I never thought of that before, or I didn't realise? Erin? I think for me there was two things. I use this every day, nail polish. I was shocked. Honestly, I had no idea. And that was a big shock for me. I really didn't know there was oil there. And the second thing was my favourite soft shoes, and there's oil in it. So that was two things that genuinely I didn't realise. Anybody else? Christers? Well, I think for me, so again, what was your shocking moment? I think for me, it was the phone. 6 litres
Yeah.
of oil in that, and a phone. Oh
Yeah.
no, I couldn't believe that. And also electric car, and then forgetting about the tyres were made of oil, and going, oh my goodness. Just things that once are pointed out to you is obvious, but you just don't think about it. Marlon, yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, uh, if I could come in, those children's toys, I thought that was terrible because there are so many of them. You think about all the children who are playing with them, they're absorbing oil all the time, you know? So all of those toys, we need to go back to those old-fashioned toys, don't we? And stop buying the plastic ones.
Emma, is there anything you want to add about this? Is this your
Yeah, I mean, I was also shocked because I think when I made the film, like everybody was very aware of what we were facing in terms of the climate emergency. But maybe I wasn't aware of just how embedded in oil my life is from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep. Of course, the obvious thing of driving a car, getting in a plane, heating your house, but everything else, I think, as everybody here has said so well, is what really needs to be looked at. And I think, what you said, Christos, about, how we look for alternatives in terms of the economy. It was the economy that really shocked me. The fact that the London stock market contains over 4 degrees of global warming in the companies that are there. I hope that that's a clear fact, but for me, that really shocked me. So I rather hoped that by making the film, we could begin to have some really nuanced conversations about how we begin to think of moving beyond oil in the world of finance, in the world of all the stuff that we use, as well as in the most obvious things, which is transport, manufacturing, and all of these things.
Yeah, makes complete sense. And it's not an easy task. It's not. It'll need effort on everyone's part, but it's not insurmountable. You know, when we look at North Sea, and you look at the oil rigs that are there, you know, they're always famously shown just off the coast of Aberdeen. You can see them just sitting there commanding the sea. But the oil affects, as we've seen from the film, is affects our economy. It affects our future. So could you give an example, please, of why we should be worried about oil for our futures and future generations? Christus? Well, I'm going to go first. So for me, it's about how the oil is how it's relating to the economy. Now, at the moment, people don't realise that the tax burden on the state, or rather, sorry, the burden on the state to pay for the oil to keep things going is a lot more. Also, look at the pollution, the amount of pollution and CO2 gases that oil rigs produce. The balance is not there anymore, and it's just something has to change. Who wants to? Erin? Okay. So following on with that, I think for me there's two main things about the North Sea oil. I see a positive and also see a negative. I can see that there is an argument for sustaining that in the short term to keep the economy alive and making sure things don't go down economically, maybe keep a sort of ring-fenced amount there. However, my problem is that I wonder if people think, well, we'll just keep kicking the can further down the road and we'll never get to the stage where we're transitioning.
Yeah, I think really it's if I can answer another question, because I think the same as everybody else, I think there's a growing awareness now that oil is not a good idea for the future. I think people are becoming more and more aware of that. And I think that we're becoming more aware that of its involvement in the finance, and it's just not sustainable for the climate, for the environment.
Well, maybe this is a perfect time because it's been mentioned a couple of times. I'll probably come to you, Emma, is about the oil and the economy. So, you know, we hear in media and press and just, you know, from everyday life that the oil really helps the revenue. It's a positive effect in the economy. This is the money that makes our schools, repairs our roads. It's so useful. We need it. You know, we spend it on all the appropriate things. But if it's to stop all of a sudden, well, then how are the schools, the roads, and all of our other services funded? Marlon?
Well, I think it's good to talk about the economy, because I think we have to kind of get rid of oil, and I think we have to look to alternatives. You know, I think we need to think of other things, like, you know, different ways of, you know, having solar panels on your roof, having wind turbines, having all kinds of other things. So that transition, I think, from the oil economy to something bigger and better, and getting revenues from sustainable and renewable energy, I think it has to be the way. I think we can't carry on with those extractive industries because the oil's running out anyway. So we need to be turning towards those new and regenerative energy supplies and resources, you know, those earth-friendly resources sooner rather than later. And there are profits there. I think we need to turn to that.
I suppose that's one solution, really. I mean, I'm sure there's many, is look at alternative, sustainable replacements.
I think there is also a question about whether actually it is that we get money from the North Sea or whether we actually subsidize a lot of it. And this is another thing that shocked me. I mean, you'll have heard of the plans for starting a new vast oil rig called Rosebank. Now, we are on track, if we go ahead with Rosebank, to give as much as £3.75 billion from the UK government. That's from our money to subsidise this oil rig, which is effectively going to be owned, more or less, by Equinor, which is Norwegian state oil. So It's kind of like passing £3.75 billion to Norway, which is one of the wealthiest countries in the world. So the tax breaks that we would give them would be equivalent to that. What we would make from that would not balance that 3.75 billion, let alone the actual CO2 emissions from it, which, if it goes ahead, and it looks like it will go ahead, would be equivalent to the emissions of 28 of the least developed countries in the world, including Uganda, including Mozambique. So we're talking about one oil rig would be the equivalent of the emissions of 700 million people in the world. So economically, it doesn't make sense. Pollution-wise, it doesn't make sense. Morally and ethically, it doesn't make sense. What are we getting from it? Why are we continuing to subsidize something that actually the head of the United Nations recently has made it really clear that Britain is going down a track which is seen as, I think the word that Guterres used was dangerously radical. So Britain is being seen as a rogue in terms of the climate, in terms of going ahead with these North Sea licenses, and particularly things like Rosebank. So I think actually economically, we have to look at a much broader picture. How much climate change is going to cost us, how much we're heading for in terms of actually not being able to stop certain emissions once they start of new oil rigs. So anyway, I have much more to say, but I think I'd better stop now and let other people speak, because I think you've
Oh, we were mesmerised there. Thank you so much for that. And I think that was so good, because I'm sure our members of audience, at home will be wondering, that seems very different, because they're thinking, we're paying this wee bit amount of money towards this, production of this new oil rig, but don't realise when you add all together, actually we're paying all this amount of money from us to a private company to make profit, and we don't get it back. So that was lovely.
I wanted to just come back on Emma, and I wanted to say, yeah, that was one really useful thing about the film for me, because it was really stunning to see that case presented, and I think people don't know about it, and I think it's really good. We know about the kind of the environment, and the oil is bad, but I think we don't know about the finances. We don't know about all of those those sorts of things. So please do keep going with the film, because I think it was really impactful. And all of these oil rigs, I didn't realize there were so many in the North Sea. I can't remember the number. It's 27 or something, wasn't it, that had been sold off? And yep. Then they dropped it down to 6. So Shell had reduced their number of oil rigs down to 6, and then other countries were buying up the other 27 oil rigs and taking over, and they were extracting oil from our North Sea, but Scotland had no power over that. So we're selling off those assets to other governments, and that was absolutely gobsmacking for me. I did not know that. And that to decommission oil rigs, we're paying for that, yeah. So that we're paying to build them, and then we're paying to decommission them. So that's crazy. We're paying our tax to decommission oil rigs. Why are we paying this? We are paying for that all the time. Yeah, crazy. What's going on?
Thanks for that, Marilyn. That's such an interesting way to look at it. We don't get that much. Okay, I'm just going to have a wee look at my questions. I'm just looking to see the things that we've covered already. So the next thing I want to ask you about is, if you look at we know the North Sea has lots of oil rigs there, and also what happens is they have a pipeline that connects all the oil rigs together, so that the crude oil can then be put to or around where the crude oil goes under pipes along where people live their houses and things like that. Can you give me an example of this transportation of crude oil and how it affects people? Well, it affects your sleep. It affects you at night time because there was bright lights. The film had said that as well. It gives you strange patterns in the night. It's not a healthy environment to be in amongst all of that pollution. So there is definitely well-being and health effects. Christers. I think linked to that, for me, one of the things that really affected me the most was that that you're going on with your everyday life and you don't realize how much oil and the production of that is impacting in your life. I mean, I'm young and I'm looking at this CO2 pollution and I don't want that to happen. But then they're talking about, rather than stopping the oil production, looking at ways that they can carbon capture. So rather than stopping what they're doing, they're looking for ways to excuse it. I think I'm right in that. That's the new thing. But they seem to think that's a solution. But I don't see that as a
Yeah.
solution. I see that as just a way
Yeah,
of
I think
obfuscating.
just related to that health question, we're absorbing CO2 into our lungs, and it creates cancer. We're breathing that in. I think we're going about our everyday business thinking we're fine, but if you live near an oil refinery, those effects are far more intensified and much worse. So I think we need to campaign more about awareness, of the effects on our health from this industry.
Yeah.
Yes, and I just wanted to pick up on this other issue of carbon capture, which was raised, if that's okay.
Yep, absolutely. I just had my eyes away from you looking at my notes there. Go for it, Emma.
Sorry. Yeah, the whole issue of carbon capture, I think, is a really interesting one that Christos just raised. And it was something I didn't know much about when I began making the film. So it sounds great, doesn't it? That there will be a solution to capture the CO2 that is being emitted from oil. And it sounds like this is a magic answer to where we're at. That if enough carbon capture is used, then we don't have to worry. But carbon capture isn't a new thing. I mean, Kevin Anderson, who's a professor of engineering and used to work on oil rigs, actually, is very articulate in the film about the fact that it's been around for actually quite a long time. And it hasn't managed to prove itself as being able to do what it promises to do. So sadly, as much as we would like to think that that would be an answer, right now it isn't. And it hasn't been for the last 10, 15 years. So I think there's a few things that are almost terms that are used a lot. One is carbon capture, the other is net zero, which also sounds great because, net zero gives a sense that actually it's not about zero emissions. It's about, it's zero as long as we plant trees, as long as we give money to carbon capture, as long as we offset or do other things that give a notion that actually a balance will be obtained, which is net zero, not just zero. But under that expression net zero, all sorts of, frankly, duplicit behavior can take place by big companies, because it means that there's a term that allows them to maybe put a little bit, to duck and dive from the fact that we need to move towards zero. However, I don't want to make it sound like I'm demonizing big companies, because I don't think that's helpful. I think really we need to demand big discussions about how we're going to move beyond oil. And obviously look to our own lives, but until licenses stop, we're not going to be able to really deal with what's happening in the North Sea.
So really, yeah, we're needing to stop the licenses before we can even have the next conversation, really. Erin, you've got something to say. Yeah, Emma, that was wonderful what you said, and I agree with you completely. And just want to take this opportunity to say that I really loved the documentary. And I think what we have to really realise is that it's not just the businesses, it's individuals, it's everyone. And when we're looking to ourselves, we should also be looking to companies as well and demanding that they do better. So, I just thought you just covered that point so beautifully. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we've got a question now coming in from a member of our audience. It's Samuel Perkins. So Samuel's questions is, do acrylic paints have oil contained within them?
This is such a great question, Samuel. I've got a friend who's an artist called Lizzie Rose, who's one of my dear friends and neighbors, and she's a great artist. And she has a show about to open, and she decided, I'm not going to use acrylic paints because they've got oil in them. Well, it's very difficult to find paints that don't have oil in them, and they're very expensive. So she's gradually trying to work out a way of finding an alternative. But yeah, it's a great question. Acrylic paints have oil in them.
Marilyn, you had your hand up?
I'm just wondering about that question, really. And I'm thinking, if you go back to the oil, the old days, the great masters, the old masters in painting, maybe it's worth finding out what they used, because that was before extractive oil.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah, I mean, go back to the great masters and find out what they used and use that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Marilyn. I'm just thinking, we go to these museums and, we can go further back. The Egyptians, the Greek, they used colour.
Yeah,
but we didn't have oil.
Yeah. Good point.
Okay, we have another question coming in from the audience, and it's just about to pop up, and it's from Ailish Barry. So Ailish's question is, how would we know what oil is in the loo, or if there's oils getting through, our water system, and is that a good thing, bad oil, or what is good oil, bad oil, if there is such a thing? So really, how do you look at packaging? I think that's what he's asking, and looking about what the kind of oil.
I think you have to read the small print, basically.
I mean, I always personally go to Google. I try Google because you can usually get your information then. And maybe stick labels and everything, then you know what's an oil product or not. Okay.
Yeah, read the label.
So we've got another question, or rather, I'm going back to my own questions. One of you raised, I remember in our discussions, we were talking about the Paris Agreement. And I know it was in the documentary, and the Paris Agreement happened a few years back. It's now 2023, but the Paris Agreement's main aim was to look at achieving net zero by 2050. And in order to do that, there had to be a serious effort of reducing emissions to get there. And everybody at the time said it's going to be hard. Do you think we're going to achieve it? And do you think it will be hard? Christos? Oh no, Erin. I think it will be hard because I think we've not changed hearts, minds and attitudes yet. I think we've not got the companies and big business on board. They're still looking at profit as the main motivator. We really need to do an awful lot more work in that. I mean, 2050 is not that far away, but from what they think they're going to get, I wonder if it's going to happen. I look to us as humans, and the youth particularly, get up there and campaign. We have to get our voices heard and voices raised.
I agree with Erin. I think this is why we have to campaign, and we need more research on the effects of oil. They knew way back that this was going to be dangerous for the environment. They knew a long time ago. you know, if the northern ice caps melt, you know, up at the poles there, we're all in trouble. So 2050 is, you know, we've only got 27 years left. I mean, you know, we really need to really be working together on this. We really need to pull together. Everybody knows this now. We have to do something now. You know, I don't know whether people think I'm a troublemaker because I'm a campaigner, but I'm really just working with the facts. This is the truth of the situation.
Christers, well, for me, 2050 is not a long way ahead. I still my life be there and a good part of my life, but I'm looking at the next 10 years and I see if there's not a distinct reduction in the next 10 years and we are still putting things off and kicking the can further up the road, we will not reach that target. You know, it just won't happen. That's my feeling. I think it's questionable. I think every delay now affects the delay for 2050. Well, Avril, I have to agree with Christers. I mean, you know, sometimes people, and maybe sometimes young people as well, say, 2050, that's eons away, but it's not, you know, and there's so much for us to do.
Yeah.
And we have to go through a transition, and it is a process. So we have to look at solutions each step of the way. You know, so and if we don't do that and we can't see the future and can't see where we're going and where we're heading, then we're not going to achieve it. So it makes sense to me that we're being active now.
And you're saying 2050, you know, working towards that, but they're just about to open a new oil rig and a new oil field. So how on earth could they get to 2050 in, you know, it's just 27 years?
You know, it really is terrible. I mean, look at this year or this summer, what we've been having. The global temperatures have increased. We have seen so much effect, you
Yeah.
know, from the global warming. Well, how much do we need? What evidence we can see it? It's not fair. It's not fair in our environment. It's not fair in everybody around us as well. And we've got a human responsibility to think of our neighbours in other countries. We're creating floods. We're creating really bad things. I remember in the documentary that you mentioned two countries. Bangladesh was one of them, if I'm right, and the other one's Vietnam.
Vietnam, yeah.
Yeah, well, that was the two countries she decided to spotlight because of the severe flooding that they had. You know, and people were displaced, they were running for their lives, they lost their homes, they lost their possessions, and all the rest that goes with that. You know, and so, you know, what we're
And the
thinking
rice.
is that that's going to happen more and more. And these people then are going to look and say, this land for me, my home is not safe. So, because of the climate change, we're going to look at people actually migrating as well. So, it's going to affect everybody across the world, and every country will be flapping about, and then they'll have realised it's been too late because they've not been looking after what's been happening. So, I mean, it said in the documentary that as a result of worldwide climate change, you will have displacement of ordinary human beings all over the world. So there'll be massive migrants. What do you think of that?
I think it's sad. I think it's really sad. I think Emma's film particularly was talking about Vietnam and saying that 90% of the landmass of Vietnam is going to be covered in water. I mean, that's really shocking, isn't it? That's, you know, practically the whole of Vietnam. So all of those people are going to have to move to another country, aren't they? You know, so all across the globe, we're going to see people migrating from one country to another, you know.
Yeah, and also, you know, when people are seeking asylum, I mean, look at what's happening at the moment. The attitude's not great globally. So what's going to happen then? You know, if this continues and we don't take action, I worry about people. You know, I think for me as well, as we look at the climate change journey, and I can predict the future, there's going to be a serious situation. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to know that. The world is not healthy at the moment, and we need to really focus on that. And how we do
Yeah.
that is working together, make the small changes in your own home, you know, change how you do things, and let's try and get us back on track so that we can actually achieve that. We really need to stop talking and make a first step.
And for me, I think, you know, we have to go back in time, really. You know, uh, and you think about, you know, colonization and people taking over other countries, and you know, I mean, you've got to go right back to there.
Emma, do you want to join? Anything you're getting to say?
I think you're all just so interesting to listen to. I've just really been enjoying hearing you and your passion and your concerns. I completely share. Yeah, I think the thing is that it's this interesting balance that we have to have, isn't it? That we realize the seriousness of it, which you all do and we all do, and we really fully open our eyes to it. But that we don't get so lost in despair that we don't feel we can do anything. I think the thing that I feel very passionately is that this machine, this oil machine, was made by human beings. And if it was made by human beings are also capable very quickly of changing things around. Because remember, they didn't even know they were going to find North Sea oil. And they needed to invent this incredible infrastructure to make it all work. But my God, when they thought that they were going to achieve it, they moved really quickly to do so. So they had those skills. We have those skills also of turning this around. The technology is there. You know, sometimes we're led to believe that the technology is not there. The technology is there. Of course, our lives will have to change. We had to, you know, we all changed a lot during lockdown, and of course, it was a very difficult time for many people. But I'm sure many people will also say that it was also a time when people pulled together, when they understood what the real values were that mattered. You know, I don't know what the answer is. I think all of us are struggling to find it, but I think having discussion is a number one thing associated with it. Having it with our families, having it with our communities, having it with our workplaces, and also asking questions about, if you're lucky enough to have a pension, where does my pension go? What is it financing? Is it financing oil? I don't want it to finance oil.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So just taking us back a wee bit from what you were saying there, sort of, Emma, we can start to sort of build a picture and say that, you know, people, you know, maybe would have a real issue with saying, like, I don't want my pension investment to be subsidising the destruction of the planet, for want of a better word, you know, or making floods more frequent, you know, or going against the Paris Agreement. So I take that on board. And if we think about the Paris Agreement, that was all about trying to maintain the global temperature at
Below
1.5%
1.5%.
Yeah, and now it's just too high. And, you know, and it's going to affect, you know, the animals, the plants, the flora, the fauna, the fish, everything in our environment. And if we look at Scotland, we have got plenty of sort of natural resources. And so, like, sort of fish, for example, you know, we used to have a thriving fishing community there, but the waters now have become too warm as a result of the drilling for oil in the North Sea. So the fish naturally have to look for another habitat. So again, we're losing our natural eco environment that's natural to Scotland because of that external oil production. Oh, it makes you so emotional. You know, it's frustrating. You know, animals are so important to our environment. We live in a world that every single part of us, we all have symbiotic relationships. We need each other. You know, and if you look way back at time, you remember when you had the big horn, the mammoths, the big tusks and things like that. Well, they then disappeared from our environment. You know, and they've now extinct. So because of the climate then, and they had to look for a new food source, which they couldn't get, or eventually. So what happened is they became extinct because they couldn't get to where natural things would be for them to stay alive. Now, I can see the absolute correlation with that happening way back then and what's happening now.
And I think that's like what Avril said about the puffins, you know, the food, the natural food source for the puffins is disappearing. So the puffins can't survive because they've got nothing to eat. So where do they go? They're going to starve to death, right? So we're losing native birds because they haven't got anything to eat. There are no fish for them.
Yeah, and obviously, you know, I suppose the trawling of the fishing in there as well is affected. We look at,
Yeah, it is.
you know, the ice caps and things like that, and that are melting, and all of that links to something else that then affects someone else, and the oils in that mix as well. So we are all connected with this, and this to me, well, let me ask the question: do you feel this is an emergency now, or is it something we can wait a wee while for? Well, Avril, as I say, I've always been involved and I've made sure that I've got information about it. So, you know, I'm trying to do things that are better. So, buying, purchasing things with less oil, trying to recycle and things that I can do. So, for me, and probably a lot of people like me, they're trying to change their own habits and their own behaviors to make sure that we get a better future. But it's hard, especially when you watch that documentary, because we all desperately want this one magic, you know, bullet solution, and it's not that. It has to be a whole series of things done in stages, but we have to do it with the cooperation of everyone. It was quite painful to watch, wasn't it? Yeah, Maz. Oh no, Christmas. Well, I want to agree with Erin.
Yeah, I'm just agreeing with Erin.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend anybody to watch this because it gives you a real insight of what your future will not look like, because you won't have a future. You know, so if you think your future is like the same now, it's going to be different.
I just wanted to come back to Erin because you try and change what you do. Yeah, I'm doing the same thing, you know. You need to live more aware, you know. Emma's film, I think, is really impactful, but we need more of that. We need more, you know, maybe not more documentary films, but more ways of making people more aware, more awake to the kind of urgency and the importance of this. Because it's not okay to be complacent about the future. We need to do something now. And young people, I think, are more aware because it is your future.
Yeah, I remember there was a girl in the documentary, um, and you know, she said quite honestly, and it gave me shivers down my spine. She went, "I don't think I'm able to bring a child into this world." What a
Yeah, that was
statement to
heartbreaking.
say. Yeah, I mean, that's something, and you think this is affecting us now. So, you know, you're saying it's not, but it's already making young people think about not having any more children. So let's think about Glasgow for a minute. We had this big COP26. We had everybody there, and the message was, you know, we're going to do that. Or wait a minute, let me ask you. You know, what did you think was going to be the first key thing that you would really have liked the message to be to start the stopping of oil production? Who we got?
Emma,
Emma, you first. What would be the
After
one
COP, you
thing?
mean?
Yeah.
Do you mean after COP in Glasgow?
Yes.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
like after we've had the discussions and everything else, you know, what was the one thing that you thought that they would actually, what would be the message about oil and its sustainability regarding climate change?
Yeah,
I
I
can see
think
you
I think
thinking.
what I would really like is for there to be a real awareness of our um our responsibility in terms of oil and in terms of the North Sea, and not it felt like before I made the film there was a sense of this big abstract thing that was the North Sea that we didn't really understand. It feels like over the years it's become clearer and clearer. Everybody knows the expression licensing rounds now. People understand those kind of things. What I'd like is for us to be really demanding with our politicians, demanding with our pension funds, demanding with our places of work that we are taking responsibility for moving away from oil, that we have a strategy in place for moving away from oil, that we're talking about dates. When is heavy industry going to actually rely on something else? When are we going to move away from it in terms of expectations of,
Got
you know,
it.
all many different aspects of life?
So more
But I think it
question,
has to,
more.
sorry, I think it has to start with the licensing rounds really being seen as something, and new drilling for oil being seen as something that has to stop now.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, but the
I
others,
agree. I agree with what Emma's saying. We have to stop it, because I'm very concerned about the crude oil, the old crude, and changing that to naphtha, which is the basis for all plastics. That part of the film I found really concerning, because that has to stop. I think we have to stop that kind of refining. I mean, where do we jump in and stop the process?
yeah, that was for me quite mesmerising as well. It's something I obviously knew, but I didn't really put it in place, and realising when you take the crude oil and then take it down to its components, that plastic is there as well, or the oil to make the plastic.
Yeah, and I know that we're talking about cheap things, and people say, oh, this is reusable, and that makes the oil extraction better, but it doesn't, because it still creates the destruction. Still, in 100, 200 years time, we're going to be surrounded by all this stuff that doesn't degrade. It's in the sea, it's everywhere. Plastic is the worst thing. So it's horrible as a substance, and it also, the process pollutes the air.
Christers. Erin? I was going to let Erin go first. Christers, you can go first.
True,
Okay,
Jen.
I'll do it. When you were just discussing about sort of like the oil extraction and things like that, and we don't want the waste of things we do, and the fact that oil can create cheaper materials, but that again causes more problems as well. I suppose I'm kind of having a similar point. My mum and dad, my grandparents told me a long time ago that in the morning it was milk bottles with glass,
Yes.
and these there were reusable. There was no plastic at that time. We had wooden toys, we had other materials, sustainable materials.
Yeah,
We didn't use
absolutely.
plastic. And we weren't, thinking we were saving the environment at the time, but we were practically. So we can change, you know, and we really do have to stop doing plastic. But we have to look at the advertising of plastic as well, because everywhere we go, whether it's sweet wrappers, wrapping on meat and everything else, there's plastic everywhere you look. So that and itself, not only do we need to, stop the oil, we need to get rid of the plastic being used so widely and change to old and alternative methods, maybe. Can I ask you, do you think 2050 is going to be too late for us? Do you think we'll do it? Emma? Oh, no, Marlon, you get in first.
Partly, I think so. I think partly it's too late. Yeah. I think if we really took action now and really took an eco path, really changed to solar, to wind, I think we could turn things around. We could save the earth for you, but only if we really engage really quickly now.
I agree with Marlon. I think we're going to have to look about how we look at our houses and how we heat them,
Yep.
whether it's solar panels, but also how people access that as well.
King Charles is on it, I think, and the government can help us. We need support.
Yeah. Also, maybe we want to sort of maybe encourage people to sort of collect the plastic. But the worrying thing is, see the plastic we can't see, the microplastics that's in everything is still there and we can't see, and there's billions of bits all over the world. So
Yeah.
there is a part of getting the plastic that we can see, but we have to be mindful that we have that microplastic that we can't see with our own eyes, that's in our water, that's coming through our bodies, and we need a way of flushing that out. Erin? Yeah, it's interesting, asking us if we're too late. I mean, I can't answer that question because we're not there yet. We're ready. Some people, we're sitting there waiting. But what we are is we're standing behind these concrete barriers when we're not getting through. And it's the big business and everyone else that's keeping us out. So we have to think about how we are ready to engage. So we need to look about working together and looking at different ways. It's time is against us. We need to make that down and make sure that our voices are heard. Emma, are we too late?
I think we need to feel that we still have power. And I think it's very much in the interests of certain big business for us to feel disempowered. So I think one of the most crucial things is that as human beings, we feel that we have agency and that we actually can affect change, because, these same companies are very conscious of public opinion. And I think if there's a sense that actually people are demanding change, then change is going to happen. And maybe part of a human being needs to feel that actually we have a future, because it's such a basic human need. So I guess I just want to argue that hope, not fanciful hope, not abstract hope, but energetic action, is actually something that will keep us human and keep us from getting depressed and keep us from feeling complete despair. Because actually, without that action, we might as well just roll up our sleeves and give up. So I think action is where it's at. And whether that's changing your money, whether that's writing to your MP, whether that's looking for alternatives in your own way of life, I think there's, as you've all said so brilliantly, there's so many different things to do. And I think I've felt very moved by the things that have been said tonight. I feel these discussions, as you've all said, are discussions that you want to continue within your communities, with your friends. And that's what I'd encourage us all to do. Keep talking and keep feeling that we have power, we have agency, and that we're not going to give up.
Yeah, we like that word in Scotland. We always have hope in our hearts. Yeah, I think maybe what we look at this is this is the alarm bell. This is this is the starting pistol.
Yeah, and we've got to stop. We have alternatives. We do have alternatives. We have all kinds of things. So stop buying plastic in the supermarket. With the wrapping on your fruit and veg that's just completely unnecessary. Take a brown paper bag. Avoid plastics.
Yeah, wow. I've asked you so many questions tonight, and my head's racing with lots of stuff. But how do we stop this addiction to the plastic? Because we are addicted. How do we do it? How do we get on board with the change? And also, because we're actually near an hour, would you believe it? What would be your tip to people out there, or any advice for the future? So I'll start with, who's going to go first? Erin, go for it. Well, first of all, I would recommend everyone to watch the documentary. You will really get a lot of information. And I think people will realise that human beings will suffer more in the future if we don't take radical steps to make changes. We need to work together. I agree that it's important that we work together and campaign to make sure that big business and government listen to us.
I want to say the same thing. I think get involved in your campaigning group, advise others, talk to each other. Yeah.
Yep, and I'm the same. I feel exactly the same as both Erin and Marlon. Get information. Find out what your views are and see if you can make a difference. Emma, have you got anything you would like to share with our audience?
I'm just adding a website called Make My Money Matter. If anyone happens to be lucky enough to have a pension, that's a good one to look at. Finding ways of making sure that your bank, your pension, your insurance are actually supporting a green transition and aren't stuck in the fossil fuel economy.
Fantastic. Thank you. Marlon, you wanted to say something? I think are you going to be the final comment? You know?
Thank you. Please think of our Mother Earth. We have only one planet. We can adapt, we can change, listen, share information. Nothing is impossible. We can change. We can live an alternative way. We can live in an eco-sustainable way. We can do this.
Oh, Marlon, what a lovely way to end. I cannot thank every single one of you. I can't believe the time and all your contributions. The film that you made was amazing, and we'll have all the links to that as well. I think we've got a link coming up here now. It may be. And if you want to actually campaign, then you can watch the film, and there's the link to it. The documentary rather, looks at everything, every aspect of oil, and it really is worth you looking at and get some information. Please share this wide and far. I want to thank everybody for giving up your time today, for expressing your views in such an honest way. And, who knows what's going to happen to 30, to 40, to 50, but, let's keep hope in our hearts, and who knows what's going to get for us in the 22nd century. Let's hope it's perfect and it's respecting Mother Nature. Thank you so very much, everyone, and thank you to everyone for watching at home. Bye.